Hey, Copes, we've been very fortunate to have some sensational guests. We've ticked off the entertainment industry with Australia's leading commentators. And then when we think of the NBA, Rick Duca last week just covering all the bases. Well, it's now time to dial it back a little bit and get into Australian sport. And when it comes to Australian sport, the AFL is the big dog. And Dylan Buckley is a little champion when it comes to podcasts. We are very much rookies. We have got a superstar in the podcast world.
We got the guru.
He's going to tell us about footy and sport and life and all the things that we love to chat about. But for us, this could be a bit of an education here, Coach, because we're on episode 11 or 12. He's in the hundreds, my friend, and he's been kind enough to join us. Dylan Buckley, thanks very much for your time, pal.
Daisy Copes, it's an absolute pleasure. It's an honour. To be honest, when I first got the call up, I thought it was a joke. I thought that someone had sent the email to the wrong person. They said, Copes and Gazy want to get you on the show. I said, they don't even know who I am. There's no way this is possible.
Oh, we know you, pal.
No, it's I'm absolutely honoured. I can't wait to get into it, boys. So thanks for having me.
Now, well, I'll kick it off, Copes, but, me, I'm the son of a legend, a superstar, absolute legend. And throughout the journey, there's always the cries of nepotism and perhaps you're getting a little bit of a special hand along the way. You, my friend, are also son of a Carlton legend, which Copes should be aware of because, believe it or not, Copes is a Carlton man. But son of Jimmy Buckley. For you, when you were growing up, was that a hindrance? Did it help? What's your reflection?
No, I appreciate that, and I know that's probably why Copes does love me a lot. I'm sure he watched a lot of Northern Blues running around there at Preston City Oval. But mate, to be honest, I never ever had any pressure on me as a kid, and I suppose you can look at that both ways because I think I was, I grew up with sort of, and without getting too deep, I grew up with just unconditional love, and my parents didn't love me more if I was playing well or playing terribly. They just wanted me to go well, and I think in one way, that led to me probably not putting expectations on myself. And I didn't really, measure myself on how good I was going. But I look at it in the scheme of life. And it's probably taught me the biggest lesson is, you're not, it's not what you do, it's who you are. So, it's probably a deeper answer than you thought.
No,
but
nice.
I think that I've really learned that through my time. And especially, you're both being professional sportsmen and going in ups and downs. And, I probably had more downs than ups. And you can really sometimes think, I'm a bad person because I'm not playing well. But, I had to quickly work that wasn't the case. And you separate the two personas. I think it's been nothing but a blessing for me. And I look back now and with Dad, being the champion that he was, I'm nothing but proud of him and nothing but proud that I got to at least try and feel his footsteps.
Mm. Now, apparently you were going to get drafted. You knew you were going to get drafted 18 months before it happened. Explain how you felt. Did you walk around like a superstar or what?
Yeah, no, pretty much, Copes. It was pretty much like you when you walk in the NBA. It was. I felt like I was LeBron James, to be honest. But to be honest, going back to that as well, it was probably the worst thing that happened, really, because if you know something when you're young, I knew I was going to get picked up. You sort of think, oh well, I don't have to try anymore. Like I don't have to. I don't have to like work hard at school. I was thinking about, I'm like, oh, don't worry about my VCE. I'm getting drafted and these sort of things. But you get there and quickly in a sporting environment, you very quickly get brought back down to earth. And I think that my first couple of seasons, I didn't realize how hard it was actually going to be, and it took me a long time to work out how hard you actually have to work. It was pretty tough. I think like you'd never regret anything, but I think that was the biggest learning curve for me was that opportunity early on. And instead of, keep like using that to go and work harder, probably as a young kid, I just got a little bit too complacent.
Right.
But I learned that real early on with my footy. And now I just, I don't really get down about it at all. I just use it as motivation and put it into areas like the podcast and stuff. And that's why I think, I've somewhat been a little bit successful in this area is because I've sort of taken all my learnings that I stuffed up early days with footy, but used it with this.
Absolutely.
That's great. And what about when you're come into the Carlton Footy Club? It's a prestigious, high profile, used to be a massive club, and I'm sure it's still in that top echelon just on its reputation. But we come from a sport where it's very player dominated. The players, the superstar players can really dictate the team, the coaching, the philosophy, all those things that go along with team sport, which is a little unusual. But I get the impression that footy is sort of heading that way, but not quite there. How is it with your when you first came in, and how the players are ingrained into whatever the club is trying to achieve in its culture?
Yeah, I think you're right, Gazy. It's such an interesting point, especially at the moment with we see what's going on with guys, looking at leaving clubs and whatnot, and clubs sort of holding on to that loyalty card. But it's a big one for me because, I got the ask twice. And I sometimes feel that, like loyalty can be one way with AFL, and that really frustrates me because, it's a hard one. I think it is actually heading down that American way, the NBA sort of mold, which – for the players, I actually think it's a good thing because I like that the power is back in their hands and not just dictated to because, realistically, clubs say, we don't want you to leave, we want you to be loyal. But then they say, oh, we want to trade you. So it's sort of like there's a double standard there and they want to get rid of guys and, that sort of thing, which I understand it's a business. I'm not saying that, but I just think that it's funny when the power sort of gets put back in the players' hands and everyone starts to freak out, which it should, it shouldn't be like that. It should be a business decision. But I think it's only just really sad for the fans because, AFL is such a fan-dominated sport and they get so loyal. They're so loyal to their teams. And you look at guys like Cade Simpson, for example, who's played 342 games for one club. I just don't even know if that's going to happen anymore. Like with how it's going now, you see a lot of guys that if they're on a team like Simo, if he was in now, and I'm not putting words in his mouth, I'm just thinking out loud, like if he was born in this modern era, would he, play half of his career if Carlton weren't going any good? Would he go to a team that's going to win a premiership?
Yeah.
Which seems to happen a lot. And I think I think it might happen. I think it probably is happening, so with free agency now. But it's really interesting. I'm excited to see what happens in that space. I don't have the answers to it, but I think I like that the ball's, in the players' court a bit more.
While you were at Carlton, did you have a special teammate or someone that you learned from, or was there somebody that stood out for you?
Yeah, I think Cade Simpson was definitely one of those guys. Cade Simpson's an incrediable guy. Like, as you know, he's just got a wealth of knowledge with his time. I don't even know. I think it's 19 seasons. It's getting pretty ridiculous. How long he's played for. So obviously you gather a fair bit there. And I was never a big guy as well. So to see someone that was sort of slight framed, being able to do what he did, it always just instilled a lot of confidence in me. And the other one was Heath Scotland, who another Carlton man who he was just an incredible leader. Like you've all got those teammates that you can look back on, and he was the one that just really hit me between the eyes with a few things he said early on, and probably at that stage I was talking about earlier when I said that I got there and just thought things were going to happen.
Yep.
He sort of just sat me down one day, and I was only 19 years of age, and he just said, "Mate, like, if you think this is just going to happen, you're kidding yourself. Like if you think that you're just going to get by and go like this." And he probably put a few more swear words in there, and it's a little bit more stern than what I'm saying it now. But yeah, it really hit me between the eyes. And the best thing about it was it wasn't a one-off conversation too. It was a follow-up, and it was like, let's do this to get better. Let's do this to get better. So, honestly, like, I played 41 games of AFL, but if he didn't do that, it might have only been 2 or 3. So, he definitely, changed my career. And as I said, I don't just look at it as a career. I look at it as a life. And I still look at those lessons today and think about, the things that he talked about. Because sport's one of those things, and you guys would know, it's so transferable. The things you learn in sport, especially around psyche and mindset, are things that you do in your everyday life. And I think that's why when sports people leave, they're so employable because you've got so many skills that you didn't even know you had.
Oh, yeah. One of the greatest educations you can have. But one of the things we've also noticed in the AFL is their ability to just identify talent. And it doesn't have to be football talent. If you've got the innate skills, and from a basketball perspective, in recent times, we've had some really good basketball players transfer over into football. We've got...
they're not transferring. The AFL is stealing our players. Keep the AFL away from us.
Well, the thing is, and they're stealing it for a good reason, though, Coach, because they've got some incredible resources. And more recently, guys that we coach, a guy called Tommy Wilson, hasn't got a game yet for Collingwood, but projected to be a star. Huey Greenwood played a long time, the Australian junior team player, and even more recently, players that we see. Matt Owies for Carlton, he was a basketballer right throughout. Mate Corlina, I might not have got his name right, but a Melbourne Tiger, 7'1", just signed by Richmond. Now, we look at this as a sport and playing team sport and say, our game, mate, if you're not sort of working at your skills at a very early age, it's pretty hard to get through to the elite level. And you look at Big Mason Cox, what he did the other night.
Yeah.
Is AFL that easy that as long as you've got a bit of athleticism that they can coach you to do anything?
It really pisses me off, to be honest. I've played my whole life trying to do these things, but I'll actually never forget because you see these, basketball background, and I think basketball is obviously, look at you blokes, you're silky as they come. Two of the best that's ever been, two of the GOATs in the presence right now. But I only wish that I played a little bit more basketball. But it was always funny speaking to the development coaches at the clubs, and they said that it's actually interesting when guys come in, say, from basketball or Gaelic, which was another one that a lot of guys come from, is they said they come in with athleticism, so that's like half the game.
Yeah.
And then the other half of the game is obviously the skill. So when you come in and you come straight into an AFL club and you've got these guys like Mason Cox and all the other sort of basketball boys like Matty Owies and other Irish guys, they come in and they learn how to kick, but they don't ever have bad habits that we get when we're younger.
Right.
So they come in straight away and learn all the skills that you need at like the AFL level. So imagine being a young kid and learning that from the start, where, from our juniors, we probably all form really bad habits that we can't break when we're older.
Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting to know that. And I think that, like, you look at Mason Cox and his set shot kick, it's incredible because he's learned it from an AFL club. He's never been able to form a bad habit with it. So that's why I think that, these basketball and Gaelic conversions in AFL are so successful because it's actually, you can look at it as a positive as well, I think.
Hey, well, just Coach, I know you want just to follow up on that one though, is that I'm watching games now, and I'm old enough to have gone back to the era when Peter Hudson. I was a Peter Hudson fan. That's how old I am, and I saw Jason Dunstall as a Hawthorn fan, and even football in general. The fundamentals of the game were part of the execution. We are seeing blokes do some of the most extraordinary. They'll be 15 metres out, and they'll run around and they're doing an S-bend to try and kick all these. What do they teach you that? Is there a science to that? What is going on where they sort of just said, well, stick the fundamentals in your date. We just want to freelance and do our own thing.
Yeah, well, I think that comes back to exactly that. You form bad habits as a kid and you start doing these snap goals and, if guys start missing a few from directly in front, they want to sort of do a snap and stuff like that, which you see. But, I know Jace gets very upset at a lot of these things on Fox, which is, it's quite hilarious. And he's right. Like, it's funny how, some guys do, the dribble kicks and all these sort of things are fundamentals. I think at the moment, which is going to be really interesting with the AFL, because of, cuts and whatnot of coaching and time and money, it probably will get back to just literally fundamentals of training, because you're not going to have as many contact hours. So, look, I'm not going to say there's going to be no more dribble kicks ever again, but it might go back to, really just skill-based rather than all the extra stuff that does it, because you guys know what it's like in elite sport. Sometimes you have meetings for having meetings and they don't actually mean anything at all, which every elite sport's really guilty of. And you only realise it when you walk out and you go, I can't believe 12 months ago I was talking about corralling a man when I know how to do that. That's not something I know how to do that. We don't need an hour meeting on it. Like,
Hey, Dylan, now, have you spoken to any of your ex-teammates in the bubble, or have you spoken to any of the guys in the bubble? Tell me about that. What's going on there?
Yeah, I have. I've spoken to a lot of the boys. It's funny that it's not funny. It's a pretty crazy time. I'm in Melbourne at the moment, so I'm in 23-hour lockdown a day. So I've literally went for a walk this morning, and now I'm done for the day. That's me.
Yeah.
But I speak to them, and I'm sort of like, they're like, oh, I just want to get home. I want to get home. I'm like, nah, boys, you don't. You really don't. But I actually spoke to them again. I thought, wow, it really is a hard thing at the moment for them. I really do feel sorry for them. And again, we go back to playing in those elite sports, and sometimes, especially if you're not going too well personally or as a team, you know what it's like in those meetings. And sometimes it feels like the world's caving in, and having a release from footy, which I was always big on, like just being able to get out and go to the beach or something, you can't do it. So mentally for their psyche, you know, they are in lockdown as well. You know, people see them and they go to the beach and stuff, but they're in lockdown. Like, it is really, really tough for these blokes. And I think, you know, we talk about the AFL season now. Whoever wins this flag this year it's going to go down in history, because it's going to be one of the craziest, strangest, mentally resilient teams that could get through this period. Because I don't think, you know, in Melbourne, the media like to play up a lot about these guys just having fun in Queensland and getting their girlfriends and wives up there. But yeah, I don't think it's been fun at all for them. I don't envy them. I think I'd still rather be back in Melbourne, to be honest, and be doing that.
And when you think of the players up there and the challenges that you're talking about, we have seen a few of them just wander off the rails a little bit, and then a few have wandered off the rails a lot. Yeah. And I'm looking at it, and you
maybe
just
Copes can mention that. I think Copes might have that one.
I was about to say, but some of the times you just want to grab these young fellas and say, mate, what the hell are you doing? What were you thinking? Is it that's just a product of the personality of the individuals, or is there something within the game that you, going through your time, the culture of the game, the bravado of the game, that leads to that, or is it just something where those individuals need a good hard look at themselves?
Look, I think there's not one thing. I think it's a bit of everything, really. You think about it, I think maybe 500 players up there at the moment. 95% of guys are doing the right thing. But you play sport, and it's the biggest sport in Australia. Things are going to get documented, and I'm not saying for one thing the things that they've done aren't great, because they're not. But I think it does just maybe come back to the individual and their mindset at the time. They've obviously stuffed up. They know they have, and it's not acceptable when you're playing AFL, let alone not playing AFL, because the rules are, you know, COVID. Like, it's not a rule just for them. It's a rule for everyone. You know, you can't be doing that at this time. So, yeah, by no means am I saying that players should be getting away with this stuff, because it's not right. But, you know, I just want to say 95% of guys are doing the right thing. And it's hard when a few people stuff up, and there's always going to be stuffs up. You know, people, 22-year-old guys and 19-year-old guys in Melbourne are doing the exact same things. But you've got to know that when you exactly, But when you're playing footy, though, you have to wear that badge, and you have to be respectful of everything. And that's the job that you've got, because you're getting paid to play. You're getting paid to do the thing you love, and you obviously carry a lot more weight. So you're never going to be a normal 19-year-old kid, but you should embrace that. And
Well, I've learned over this last extraordinary period that we're going through, that in the United States, strip clubs, they sell the greatest chicken wings, apparently, according to Copes. Strip clubs, it's got nothing to do with the entertainment. It's all about the chicken wings. And apparently strip clubs up north, it's the kebabs that really sort of...
I've heard that. I have heard that.
You work up a big sweat. You need food, bro. It is what it is.
It's good we can laugh about it now. I'm just happy. I'm just happy I didn't get into that trouble when I was. I feel sorry for the boys, and I hope that it doesn't affect it too much. But like someone said, the sad reality is that, you know, that might be potentially someone's job. That's lost in the club, and that's the really sad part of it. You know, you don't think about that at the time, but it's not ideal, definitely, and I hope that a lot more learn from it.
Speaking of trouble, did you get in any trouble at all, or were you a good boy?
Oh, geez. Well, look, I didn't go to any kebab shops like that, but look.
We know you can't tell everything.
I think the best thing about not getting found out is you don't have to tell anyone about it. So I'd probably rather just keep it for maybe off air when we have a few beers.
Well, if you were putting in a percentage, like we have a perception, and some of these really. The stuff gets overblown a lot of the time as well. But to me, I look at these players now as compared to what they were, and the body types, the condition they're in. I mean, it is elite, the way in which they prepare. So I assume on that basis that you know, not too many. It's pretty hard to go and stuff up because of the way in which they police you guys and the systems they have in place.
Yeah, that's probably been the surprising thing for me leaving the game. I've obviously been out for nearly 12 months. Was that, because I know how strict AFL is, and I know how, you know what you're doing at the time is, you know, when you're playing sport and even in life, you know, you sort of know right from wrong. I sort of think most people do, but it's been crazy to think that, like you'd sort of process that at the time. Again, you don't know what's going on with the individual, but just hopefully, we can learn from it, I suppose, now. And a lot of guys, I think a lot of guys will have learnt from, obviously it takes sometimes one person or two people to stuff up and you can, learn from their mistakes. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, what happens with that going forward, because like you said, it's pretty, sporting environments are very strict, and it's that fine line of letting guys live their life and then also being able to have balance and then perform on the field. And if you're locked in a room for 24 hours a day, how are you going to go out in the field and are you going to be happy? So I think it's just about trying to work out that fine balance.
When you said you finished playing about 12 months ago, did you have any depression at all? Or, most guys go through something when you're not hanging with the boys and camaraderie being around the team. How did it feel to just get, tie up the boots?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Copes. I say I'm lucky, but I was really lucky in the fact that I signed 4 one-year deals, my last 4 contracts. So it wasn't lucky at all, but I look back at it now and it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I sort of had every year was going to be my last year.
Right.
So I sort of learnt over that period that I had to start putting things in place to get myself ready to transition the best, so that when I did actually transition, I was so ready for it. Like I was 100% ready to transition and ready to go. I was networking, I started my podcast. I was going and doing work outside of the club. And it sort of got to the stage when my last, contract came, even though I wasn't ever going to get one. I was sort of going in there just hoping they didn't give me one, because it would have been hard to say no to, but I was ready to transition.
Right.
And I'd sort of put a lot of things in place, ready to go. And it was sort of, my footy was going downhill and other stuff was going up. So it was a really sort of good time for me to transition out of footy. But yeah, like it was definitely tough. I think the hardest thing about it, and I'm sure you boys are the same, like playing team sport, the only thing I miss is the locker rooms.
Yeah.
And that was definitely, that was my game day really. Like that was just my best part of coming into the club, and where I had my most fun. But your mates, they're still there. We speak all the time, and I still feel more a part of it than when I, like, obviously not playing, but still in contact with them every day. And your mates, if they want to stay in touch and you want to stay in touch with them, you always make an effort to do it. So I did think that it was going to be harder than it has been, especially this year being in COVID. But I think I've just been so busy and so happy with life now, like waking up on a weekend and not having to go and, cold chase a ball around and get bashed. I'm just waking up, we'll take the dog for a walk and have a coffee, and life's good. Life's real good.
Why did you launch it? Why was it a podcast? I mean, did they tell you had a smooth voice, or because you got the silky voice? You know what I mean? What kicked you?
Coming from you, that means a lot. To be honest, man, I was from Melbourne, and then I got delisted, and then I went to Sydney. And when I got delisted the first time, I literally had nothing. Like I had no skills at all. And I had I'd done a little bit of study, but it was nothing I was passionate about. It was nothing that I could find a purpose in. So when I left Sydney, when I finished up at Carlton and I got the opportunity to go to Sydney, I said, I'll never ever, I never want to feel like that again. And I want to have something so that when I finish up next time, I can go straight into.
Yep.
So, without being disrespectful to my footy career this last 2 years, I was pretty much a part-time footballer, part-time, trying to find my next thing.
Right.
And I think the podcast thing was, I tried to get some sort of experience in the media. But it's really hard to do that when you're not, an A-grade player in the AFL. And, what's my opinion matter really? I've played, most weeks in the VFL or NEFL. So, and I understood that, but I was never, oblivious to the fact that you need to sort of be a gun. But I just said, look, if I can start this podcast, at least I'm proactive about it, and it shows people that I can do this, so that if I got the arse in 12 months, at least, I could go to Gazy and say, Gazy, look, at least I've done 10 episodes of this podcast, check it out, rather than just rock up and sort of ask for a gig without doing anything, because that's what I did last time. So yeah, started the podcast, and at that stage, I don't think anyone even knew what a podcast was. And I didn't even think anyone would listen to it, because I didn't even know that I'm a big crime nuffy. I listen to crime podcasts a lot. And I love listening to podcasts. So I was like, well, why don't I just do this and record it? It's sort of like radio because I can't get on radio, but I'll do this. And then like I can show a radio station, hey, I've done this. But yeah, now it's actually my own thing. So I'm more, I'm very, very lucky that I did it. But yeah, I think, as I said earlier, all those lessons that probably wishing I had done that when I was playing footy and never did it. And then when I did the podcasting, I was like, well, fuck, now I've learned from this. Like, I've got to do it and stick to it and be consistent. And it's, to be honest, it's been lifesaver for me. Like, I just never really thought it would get to where it is. But it's made me meet some awesome people like yourselves.
No, you do a great job of it. When you think, though, transitioning from footy and that culture and the locker room and all the stuff that goes on into the media, and now you've got to make judgment on your former peers, and you see some of the stuff that people see as no longer appropriate. So stuff that in the locker room we take for granted. They're just blokes having a bit of fun, no harm, but because of the changing times, it means something different. Do you have trouble trying to walk that line to say, hey, fellas, what are you carrying on about? There's really nothing to this. Or do you say, well, no, in hindsight, now that I'm looking at it from the outside in, that's shit house. You shouldn't be doing that. That's a bad message. Yeah,
it's such an interesting question because of definitely what the times are in. And things are changing for the better, there's no doubt. We're getting a lot better with cultural appropriateness and what's happening. So there's no arguments there. But I think I can only comment on like what I've experienced and like what I've been through. And from my point of view, I haven't sort of found myself in any positions where I don't think, looking back that anything's been too bad. But in saying that, you never know what offends someone else. So it's not, what offends me, it's probably what offends the person, and that's what is the problem with a lot of these issues. So yeah, I think that's definitely a massive point, but I think you've got to, going forward, it's probably what we can do now rather than the past, because it can't be changed. But obviously just initiate all those things now and just be respectful as we can. But yeah, it is really hard to differentiate, and I think that realistically now, being in the game, it is such a hard thing, and guys have to think about so much, let alone training. It's also everything else that goes on in the four walls. But like I said, it's for the better now. It's just finding that fine line between it, and I think that the AFL is doing a really good job with a lot of those things now. And we go through so many training sessions a year on X, Y, and Z, and what's appropriate and what's not. And the AFLPA do a tremendous job in that. But in terms of commenting on in the media, it's one of those things where I try and just look at it from a human element. I don't like to comment on things that that aren't down sort of my expertise. Like, I'm not going to have an opinion on something if I don't have an opinion on it, and I think that's where you get yourself into trouble. If you sort of just comment on things that you're not really passionate about talking about, say rule changes or these sort of things, then people that's when you probably come undone because you don't really know enough about it. So yeah, look, if I don't have an opinion on something, I'll probably just keep my mouth shut because I know that I just talk too much and I'll probably say something that I don't really agree with anyway.
Take note of that, Gazy. That's a great reason for you, Andrew Gaze.
No, right? I have a lot of interest in a lot of different areas.
Everything.
So that's why I like to have an opinion.
Hey, Dylan, now who's your most famous guest outside of ourselves, of course?
No, of course.
Who's your most famous guest?
Daylight after that. Well, actually, I had the big Andy Bogut on the show. It was awesome. It was really cool when I finished up at Sydney. God, who else? I've had a lot of footy players. I've had a lot of like mindfulness and mindset guys like Ben Crowe and Hugh Van Cuylenberg.
Right.
But yeah, like it's so hard to split them. I just love. It's not really about the name. I sort of love just like the insight and the intel into what they give. Like I had a podcast recently with Zach Dawson, who was an AFL player who's had a tremendous career, and
great career.
He got really hard done by in the media, and yeah, his chat was probably my favourite one I've ever done, just because of the rawness and how much he sort of opened up and how much that sort of changed people's perspectives of players in the AFL. So I think that was probably like my favourite one I've done. Yeah, it's more the conversation and the messages, I think, rather than the actual name, I think, because yeah, the whole show is just probably the basis of it is just to like humanize people and to show another side to them that you didn't think you knew, other than the athlete or what they do on the field.
Right, fantastic.
At GWS, that we look at their superstar talent and you see what's going on this season, you're very, very brief out. You've got intimate knowledge of what's going on. Put your coach's hat on, or maybe you want to have a pot shot at the coach.
In other words, why do they stink so bad?
How can this talented team be where they are right now?
Yeah, it's really crazy, I think. Like, firstly, you never want to use this year as an excuse, because it's obviously not, and teams are just getting on, and some teams have gone really well, some teams haven't. Especially at the moment, Giants have had so many injuries over the last 4 years, and this is sort of a year where they've had the least injuries. So that's definitely not an excuse. But, yeah, I think that in sports sometimes, and I think you can only really understand this if you're really in the four walls, but it's like a landslide. I think, when something goes wrong and you try and fix something, and then this goes and you fix that and you fix that, and you really get in that mindset of the four walls. And I just think that sometimes you need to take a step back and just realize, like, hey, we're actually a really good team. Like, we're in the grand final last year. And the thing about the Giants were so good at was releasing from that. And living in Sydney is a sports non-dominated by AFL, where the boys can literally just go to the club, and then we go to the beach, go fishing, go surfing. No one knows who we are. We just do whatever we want. Whereas I think, and I'm not saying this is the answer, but I think, like, being in the hub now, none of these boys have a release at all. Like, they're literally just living footy 24/7, every day. So I think that could be an element that's sort of playing on their mind. They're so used to just not being in a footy, environment, that it's just so strong all the time. Again, it's not something that should be, derailing a season per se, but to say it's been ideal, I think that could be something that's got to do with it. But then again, a lot of teams are probably going through that as well.
In your expert opinion, then, who wins the grand final this year?
I definitely would not say it's an expert opinion. For one,
more expert than us, that's for sure.
Hey, you know the game better than us.
I think. Look, I reckon there's 4 teams, which is pretty obvious. There's Richmond, Port Adelaide, Geelong, and West Coast. That I think are around the mark, and obviously Brisbane as well. So just name 5, which really is I'll try and narrow it down for you. But I think realistically, you got to look, like, I'm a big believer in momentum, and I think that momentum's like the number one thing that wins finals and grand finals, because you win your first final, and if you win it sort of under trying circumstances, and you build that belief in the team, and it's all about peaking at the right time. And that's why I think Port Adelaide have been so good this year, because they've really just been peaking, for a while, and I hope that they can maintain that. I think that, like, if they keep their momentum, they're going to be pretty dangerous. But I think, again, if it can be pretty hard to keep that momentum for a whole final series, especially the year it's been. And then you look at a team like West Coast, who haven't really been in good momentum. They've got a lot of injuries, and they've still just kept finding a way to win games. So I sort of really like West Coast, and I think that they're a team that, if they can get back their good players, which is a lot of them out and a lot of them injured, and they can come back and sort of find some good players, find some momentum, I think that they can win the flag. So I think, look, I'm going to tip West Coast. I'll just say I'm going to tip West Coast. I think that they're the best team at the moment.
Hey, you throughout your career, albeit that, I'm sure it wasn't as long as what you wanted it to be, but you got to play and experience some different coaching styles, I would assume.
Yeah, I did, definitely.
With Mickey Malthouse, one of the absolute legends of the coaching caper, and then the more, this will sound like an insult to Mick Malthouse, but the more modern or younger type coaches as well. One, is there a sort of a base level of consistency in coaching in the AFL that doesn't really matter? And 2, what is the issues with coaches that you think are the non-negotiables, the most important aspects of it?
Yeah, it probably just, you're right. Like, it probably just comes back to the individual and what they prefer and how they think is best coached. Like, I've probably reflected on it a little bit in my, retirement per se, or sacking times 2. But I think the things that I enjoyed most about coaching was, look, not that this gets thrown around a lot about, like, coaches being, really in touch with their players and stuff. I don't think that and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying I don't think you need to be best mates with your coach. Right. I don't think that that's really needed. I think you just need to have, like, really good respect there. I was never going to go and have, a kick or a sleepover at Mick's house, but I really respected him and like I loved everything he said. So I don't like I love the modern day coaching in terms of that, but I also really like I also think that there's still room for a coach that's just a leader that really respects and has strong messages and tells you how it is. I don't think that you need to have a human connection with someone to play well. Because, I look back at Mick, and he was really good at relationships, like very, very good, but he was just a really good leader as well. Whereas a lot of coaches now, we talk about, they say a lot about these, human connections and stuff. And I think it's great. It's awesome, but I just don't think you need to have that. I think there's different ways that people go about it. I think Mick was probably one of the favorite coaches I had because he just sort of was so really basic and just told me what I needed to do. And he's, it was either I did it or I didn't. And if I did it, I played. And if I didn't, I didn't. So I played nearly my best footy under him because he just was really honest with me. And I really loved the way he went about it just in terms of how frank he was. And really loved that sort of side of it. But then again, I also had Bolts as well and Johnny Barker, who are new age coaches who were just so approachable and really want to learn from. And I learned so much from Bolts in terms of like mindset and stuff as well, which was incredible. And he's been one of the biggest sort of impacts on me personally as a person. Even though he, ended up, getting rid of me at Carlton, I still have an awesome relationship with him because of just like he's a very like very, very strong mindset person. And I think honestly, like he's had a massive impact at Carlton. When he got sacked, I was actually really sad because I knew how much impact he actually had there. And I think that it's going to be exciting to see Carlton go again because I think a lot of those, as good a job Teague is doing, I think a lot of those, foundations have been set with Bolts as well. I think if I knew the answer to that, I'd probably be getting paid a lot more money or be a coach. But in short terms, to wrap it all up, I don't think there is an answer of like what the best coach is. I think there's just so many different facets and how it connects to the group, how it connects to the individual. But from my perspective, I think that you can be any way. You just got to have the respect of the group.
Man, we know we've had you on here for 40 minutes, and we know you got to get going. But I got one more question for you. What kind of advice did your dad give you when you got drafted there? What was the best advice he gave you?
Best advice? Yeah, well, it probably sort of shows a bit, but Dad always just said that, when you control the ball, you control the game. And that was something that, it's pretty obvious, but it was just something that he always said to me in terms of footy. And I think it's so true. When you've got the ball in your hands, you actually control the outcome. It's like when you're playing basketball as well. You're the only one that can actually do anything at that stage when you've got the ball. So it's an obvious one, but you can really break it down and get the real finer details in it because you can really impact the game so much when you have the ball. And I think that that's something that I always thought about and sometimes overthought it a lot too, because you don't, sometimes you go into instinct and it's better, but sometimes you overthink things and you might stuff it up. So that was a sort of consistent battle throughout my career and trying to work that out. But the best advice he ever gave me, honestly, was just to be happy and enjoy it and also set myself up outside of footy. It was the biggest sort of impact on me in terms of when you play sport, you can sort of get and meet people and get people for a coffee and sit down and people will, hear what you want to say and get advice and hang out and that sort of thing. So, I used my football career as a football career, but I also got a degree in networking and I tried to, meet as many people as I could and make connections and learn what I wanted to do with my life because I think a lot of guys, and a lot of this is just my personal thing, I probably realised I was never going to win a Brownlow or anything like that. So I said, I never wanted my football career to be the best part of my life and I never wanted it to be the one thing that I was defined by. So I always said that when I finish footy, I want my life to go better. Like I want it to be like the next best thing because that's what he always, installed me was make sure you don't just have footy because he won 3 flags and was an absolute champion and was incredible. But I think he really struggled when he left footy because he didn't have that anymore and he didn't have the next thing. So our careers are probably mirrored, really like he probably installed in what he didn't do where I didn't probably get the things on the field, but he taught me what to do after. So yeah, I think hopefully that's answered your question, but they're probably the biggest things I've learned from him for sure.
No, it makes a whole lot of sense, and making sure you enjoy the journey is the best one. The game of footy though, there's a lot of talk about the aesthetic of the game of footy right now. With your experiences, do we need changes in the game? Is there rules do we need to change? Albeit there's been a few, because it's fair to say, maybe because I'm watching a whole lot more of it because I'm stuck at home, living in Melbourne. But where do you see the game at right now?
Look, it's something that when I said earlier, you don't comment on something you're not passionate about. This is probably something I am passionate about.
There we go.
I think it's really frustrating when we talk about the game, because I look at a game of soccer and basketball as well. I don't know what the rule changes are like in basketball, but the game of soccer, and don't even quote me on these stats because it could be totally false, but I'm pretty sure in the last 50 to 100 years of soccer, they've had 3 rule changes. That's 3, not 2. Sorry, 3 rule changes.
Yes.
Whereas you can get used to the game, and they don't just get caught up on these tiny things. And I think sometimes as the AFL, we're so reactive. Like, we change a rule, and then we change a rule because we changed that rule, and then we change this other rule, and then we get angry because the umpires can't do what we're doing, so we change another rule. It's like, hey, how about we just don't change any rules for 5 years, and we just do a ban on rule changes? Because the more rules we change, the more rules we're going to have to change. It really does annoy me a little bit how much the rules do change in the AFL. And I understand this year's been it's due to the fact of COVID, and it's totally irrelevant to what we're doing now, because they've had to do these things to get the year out, and that's totally fine. But I'd really like, if things were to go back to normal next year, and touch wood, everything does go back to normal, I'd love to just, put a lock on the game for 3 years and just let it work its thing out. Because, guys, I remember they were doing, they capped the interchanges, and, why were they capping that? Because there was too much scoring, or people were too fit? But now it's like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with guys being too fit and playing good footy? Or I don't sort of understand it. So, look, I think if we just leave the game how it is for a little bit, and it'll work itself out. Realistically, no one's going to stop watching football. Everyone loves it. Everyone loves a game. And I think we just need to be a bit more patient with it. There's some superstars coming through. I think that if the umpires can really, I feel so sorry for them, because all these changes, then they're got to have to try and learn them as well. They're just doing what they're told. They can get used to it as well. They're not worried about these little, little nuances in the game as well. So I think, it's probably a very outdated opinion, but I just feel like playing it was something that always really annoyed me was rule changes. I love the NAB Cup and stuff if they trial it all there and they can do whatever they want. But I just think that when it gets back to the finer things, I'd love to just see the game sort of stick to how it is for at least, 2 or 3 years without trying to change something.
Check this out, though. Check this out for me who watches footy. And they're always talking about getting the game flowing. Not a rule change. This is not a rule change. It's an existing rule. But if you kick the ball anywhere on the field and no one else touches it and it goes out of bounds, should be the other team's kick.
Because so the problem with that,
and
though,
like it is with it's a kick out.
Let's
when you
listen
kick
to
the ball,
expert, Drewy. Okay.
when you kick the ball out.
I'm happy to keep going. I
No,
know what you mean.
Listen to you, bro. Let's go.
No, but I just mean it's if that happens, right? Then some team will get way too good at defending that, and then it will slow the game down again. And they say, okay, well, how about
you kick it out of bounds?
No, what? But if they kick it out of bounds and someone's I get the ball now,
and
so
no
you
one's
kick it out of
touched
bounds, and no one's touched it, so I get the free kick. Your team might get some new play, or someone might find a new sort of way to disembowel this rule that doesn't, was meant purpose for it. So then they create another rule to then say, oh, no, actually,
right,
now that you've done that rule, I can't kick for 5 seconds because otherwise it's too quick to set up or something like that. This is what happens. They just keep changing it.
You're concerned about the unintended consequences of a rule like that. But I reckon, we're going down this. I don't know. It's just hard to figure out.
That's right, Drewy. You don't know. You're not.
I don't know.
Now. You don't know.
I know.
I don't know.
But if we make impact decisions, and I think we make reactive decisions. Realistically, we're thinking about changing rules after one season. How about we give it a cap on it, or the thing saying don't change a rule for 2 seasons or 3 seasons, right? Then you have a ground of actual proof of 3 seasons of trends where this has actually happened, and then you can make decisions. But not not rule changes in the middle of the year and not rule changes after one season. Like, things change. So many things change throughout a year. Like, last year's stats were so different to this year's stats. So you can't change a rule off one season just because it's happened once. Like, if you know what I mean.
No, I'm with you. So you're saying the 9-point goal is probably not going to come in anytime soon?
I was more thinking like a 15-point. We should also get a basketball ring as well in the middle of the goals, just in case you can like slam dunk as well. I was thinking that'd be good.
No. Hey, just on that, because one of the reasons in basketball they brought in the 3-point line. It's funny because I'm seeing the arguments, the debates, and you listen to radio, which you're a part of, and you hear all the different conversations. But one of the reasons they put in a 3-point line is almost in basketball is almost identical to what it is now. It's because they wanted to spread the floor. It was too congested, and players couldn't get to the rim, so they reward people for shooting a 3-ball, spreads the floor, and it allows attack on the rim a little bit more for those spectacular plays. So it's sort of interesting to see the conversation and the way that people have it and relate it to the experiences that we went through in our sport a long time ago. And it's probably only been in the last 10 years. So the rule's been in place for probably over 40 years. The rule's been at 3-point line. But it's really only been in the last 10 years where it's had such a profound impact on the game. So like you're saying, it took a long time before the 3-point line really had a significant influence.
So
on
what
the
are
game.
they trying to? So what's happening now? Just because so many players are shooting 3-pointers, they're worried about it, or?
Well, right now there's a lot of they're just coming down and jacking up threes because the analytics say, well, just got to shoot threes or get to the rim, taking away the mid range, the mid range was such an important part of our game that a lot of the analytics is saying don't do that. So coaches, like you look at the Houston Rockets, it's either at the rim or it's a 3-ball.
And that's why the Houston Rockets are at home right now.
That's right. We're not that. Hey, do you follow the NBA at all, Dylan?
Mate, look, I'll be honest. I actually pooed my pants a little bit 5 minutes before the interview, and I called my mate, and I said, mate, I'm about to go on a podcast with Copes and Gazy. I need some points. So send me through 5 points just to get across before I get into it. I played footy, obviously. Not that well, but I played.
No, don't undersell yourself.
I'm not really massively into sport, if that makes sense. So I'm more of just like a documentary sort of movie sort of guy. But I'm across it. I've got some notes here. So it says Lakers look like they'll cruise through the rest of the playoffs and win pretty easily for LeBron's 4th title.
Well, that's what I said. Copes was a Clippers man. No, he was a Clippers man, and they went out. Ta-da, Clippers. Yeah, go ahead.
Denver, crazy finish to get them into the Western Conference Finals. Jamal Murray, the Joker, playing some seriously good basketball.
Yes, Joker's becoming my favourite player, by the way. One of my favourites.
European.
Miami versus Boston, a great matchup between Butler and Tatum.
Yes.
So that'll be great. I'm very looking forward to that. LA Clippers lost the plot. Yeah, they did, didn't they? They will be interesting to see how they respond after a 3-1 up, losing to Denver, which was disappointing. Paul George just not good enough.
Well, that's true.
Whoever sent you this is on the ball.
Is on the money.
He's on the money.
Last one. Giannis leaving or staying, we just don't know. The Bucks promised him they would spend big in free agency to give some better players, but will he stay? We don't know. So he unfollowed the Bucks on Instagram and all his teammates, which is.
Well, he does that. Here's the thing: he does that every year. After every end of season, he unfollows. So that's not new. And yesterday he came out and wanted to thank his fans, and he was saying that he's looking forward to next season, the greatest fans in the world, blah blah blah. So the language coming out of Giannis's mouth is.
I don't think it matters. I don't follow NBA, and that doesn't seem good for any Bucks supporters, to be honest.
Whoever gave you that information is on.
I'll let him know.
That was spot on. Well, it's Dylan and Friends is what we're trying to aspire to. Okay, so we're trying to get
taking over soon.
Your level of reach. Because you had over 500,000. Is that right? Over 500,000?
Actually, if I'm going to flex on you, it's 1.5 million.
Wow!
I tell you what, I must have got last week's data.
Yeah, you must have got. That must. Yeah,
1.5 million people jumping on.
Hey, make sure you share our
Oh, I will for sure. Don't worry about that.
Well, right now we have, and I say this somewhat facetiously, but somewhat a reality. We've got dozens of listeners. All right, so we are a growing audience. You had to start off at the lower levels, and we're trying to aspire to you. So we learnt from you with your podcast. We've learnt a lot from you today, and we cannot thank you enough for the time that you've allocated to us. And we wish you all the best with your next journey. It seems like you got your head on the right place. A fun time for you in this new arena that you're in, and doing exceptionally good. And good on the AFL for teaching you how to take that next step. That's full credit to them.
And I'm looking forward to having that beer with you because I want to hear those stories, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, bloody oath. No, Gazy Copes, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. In all seriousness, just for you guys to get me on the show is really an honor for me. So blessed to have a chat with you all. Can't wait to catch up, hopefully, when we're allowed out of the house, which would be nice. And, Copes, your shout for beers, my friend, because I know you got the big wallet. I know you both got the big wallets.
Well, he doesn't. I don't drink, so I'm happy to share it.
That's what the money is right there.
Dylan and Friends is where it's all about. You go on Spotify, YouTube, all the channels. Is it YouTube? Are you on YouTube? Or
everywhere, yeah. YouTube, everywhere. iTunes, Spotify.
Absolutely everywhere if you want to catch the great man and listen to his interviews. Very insightful and educational as well. So well done. Keep up the good work, and we look forward to listening to you in the future. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks again, boys.
Thanks, bro.
This has been a No Filter Media production.
Say what you want.